Hello, my VIPs, and welcome once again to Tales by Larinzy. I'm so delighted to share this wonderful moment with you, just like always. Let me start by asking you a question. If a door opens to wealth, luxury and soft life, but the price was your peace of mind, would you still enter? Well, tonight's story is centered around a girl with looks that stops traffic, a man with money that answers every prayer, and a marriage that looks perfect online. But inside, it smells like something is buried behind it. On this channel, we'll tell stories that entertain you, then leave you thinking. African-inspired emotional stories. So if you enjoy stories with suspense and morals, and that's just one more episode feeling, then subscribe to Tales by Larinzy. Hit the notification bell and join the family. I welcome you all. Now breathe in, because this story, once it starts, it doesn't let you go.
In the bustling city of Lagos, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and wealth flowed like the great Niger River, there lived a young woman named Isioma. At 23 years old, Isioma possessed the kind of beauty that made strangers pause mid-sentence, that made car horns honk in admiration, that made women clutch their husbands a little tighter when she passed by. Her skin was the color of polished mahogany, smooth and unmarred, glowing as though she had swallowed moonlight. Her eyes were large and expressive, framed by lashes so long they cast shadows on her high cheekbones. Her figure was the stuff of music videos and magazine covers, and she knew it. Oh, how she knew it. Isioma lived with her mother, Mama Nkechi, in a modest 3-bedroom flat in Surulere. The apartment was clean but aging, with walls that needed fresh paint and furniture that had seen better decades. Mama Nkechi worked as a seamstress, her fingers calloused from years of threading needles and operating her old Singer sewing machine that clattered like a locomotive every morning before dawn. Isioma, her mother would call from the kitchen, her voice weathered but still strong. "Come and help me peel these yams for dinner." But Isioma would examine her freshly manicured nails, each one a perfect oval painted in the latest trending color, adorned with tiny crystals that caught the light. "Mama, you know I
can't ruin my nails.
I just
Do you
came
know
from
how
the
much they
salon.
cost?
Do you know how much this cost? These nails are my investment." "Investment?" Mama Nkechi would shake her head, returning to her work. "What kind of investment is nails when you cannot cook for yourself or clean your own room?" Isioma would laugh, a sound like bells, beautiful but somehow empty. "Mama, you don't understand. This is the modern world. You use what you have to get what you want. I have beauty, and beauty opens doors that education and hard work cannot. Why should I ruin my hands with housework when these hands will wear diamond rings?" This was Isioma's philosophy, her guiding star, her unshakable truth. She had learned it not from books or elders, but from the glossy pages of magazines, from Instagram influencers, from the whispered conversations of girls who had made it by marrying well. She watched them parade their wealthy husbands like trophies, watched them post pictures of luxury vacations and designer bags, and she wanted that life with a hunger that consumed her. Her friends called her a slay queen, and she wore the title like a crown. Every Friday night she would spend hours preparing for the clubs, the lounges, the exclusive parties where Lagos's elite gathered. Her wardrobe was a museum of borrowed luxury, dresses on loan from friends, bags rented from online boutiques, shoes bought on credit that she paid off by performing in music videos or doing promotional work for small businesses that wanted her face associated with their brand. Isioma, you need home training, her Aunt Ngozi would scold whenever she visited. What man will marry you if you cannot cook, if you cannot keep a home? Isioma would smile sweetly and reply, the kind of man I want doesn't need a wife who can cook. He has chefs for that. He needs a wife who looks good on his arm, who can host his business associates, who turns heads when she walks into a room. That is what I bring to the table. Mama Nkechi would sigh deeply at such statements, remembering when she had tried to teach her daughter the traditional ways. How Isioma had refused to learn how to make proper jollof rice, claiming the steam would ruin her hair. How she had declined to learn proper Igbo greetings and customs, saying they were old-fashioned. How she had never learned to manage a household budget because she believed money would always flow to her like water seeking its level. My daughter, Mama Nkechi would say in their language, beauty fades like the morning mist. What will you have when the sun rises? But Isioma was not listening. She was too busy setting her standards, creating vision boards of the life she would have. Her future husband must have at least 3 houses, one in Lagos, one in Abuja, and one abroad, preferably in London or Dubai. He must drive the latest Range Rover or Bentley. He must be generous, giving her unlimited access to his wealth. He must be well connected, known in the highest circles. He must be all of this, and she believed she deserved nothing less. Her friends with lesser beauty had settled for middle-class men, accountants and bankers and small business owners. Isioma would visit their modest homes and smile politely while inwardly pitying them. She was meant for more. She was meant for greatness. She was meant for wealth. And so she waited, polishing her beauty like a weapon, sharpening her charm like a blade, positioning herself at every event where the wealthy gathered. She became known in certain circles as the beautiful one, the stunning one, the one who was going places. Men approached her constantly, but she evaluated each one like a jeweler examining stones, finding flaws, dismissing them, waiting for the diamond among the rocks. It was at the wedding of her friend Kioma, now married to a moderately successful oil and gas executive, that Isioma first saw him. The reception was held at the Eko Hotel, and the ballroom glittered with wealth and power. Isioma had worn her most stunning dress, a gold creation that hugged every curve, and she moved through the crowd like a queen surveying her kingdom. Then she felt a gaze heavy enough to have weight. She turned and saw him. He was standing near the bar, a man who looked to be in his late 40s, though his exact age was difficult to determine. He was not handsome in the conventional sense. His face was too sharp, too angular, his eyes too cold. But he radiated power. It emanated from him like heat from a flame. His suit was bespoke, probably Italian, definitely expensive. The watch on his wrist could have bought a house. The men around him seemed diminished somehow, as though his presence drew all the light and energy in the room toward him. Their eyes met, and Isioma felt a shiver run through her spine. He smiled, and it did not reach his eyes. He beckoned, a simple gesture, and despite her pride, despite her careful rules about not appearing too eager, she found herself walking toward him. "You are the most beautiful woman here," he said without preamble, his voice deep and cultured. "What is your name?" "Isioma," she replied, pleased that he had noticed what everyone else seemed too blind to see. "Isioma," he repeated, as though tasting the name. "How fitting. I am Chief Okonkwo, but my friends call me Chief." She knew the name, everyone did. Chief Okonkwo was a legend in Lagos, a man who had risen from nothing to become one of the wealthiest men in Nigeria. His business empire spanned oil, real estate, importing, and ventures that people only whispered about. He was known for his lavish parties, his political connections, his ruthlessness in business. He had been married twice before, both marriages ending in divorce, the details sealed behind legal agreements and rumored payoffs. They talked, or rather, he talked and she listened, and before the night ended he had asked for her number. She gave it, her heart racing with possibility. The courtship was a whirlwind, a hurricane of luxury that swept away any doubts. Chief Okonkwo pursued her with the single-minded focus of a predator who had spotted prey, though Isioma did not think of it that way. She thought she had been seen, finally, by someone who recognized her worth. He sent cars to pick her up, not regular cars, but convoys with security. He took her to the finest restaurants where the menu had no prices, and the wine cost more than Mama Nkechi's monthly income. He showered her with gifts, bags from Hermès and Chanel, shoes from Louboutin, jewelry that came in velvet boxes from stores she had only dreamed of entering. Mama Nkechi watched this development with growing unease. "My daughter, what do you know about this man? Where does his money come from?" "Mama, he's a businessman, oil, real estate, importation. Why are you always worried?" "Because money that comes too easy often has blood on it," her mother said quietly. But Isioma dismissed this as old-fashioned superstition, the paranoia of a generation that did not understand how the modern world worked. She was too dazzled by the life unfolding before her, too intoxicated by finally having everything she had always believed she deserved. Within 6 months, Chief Okonkwo asked her to marry him. The proposal happened at his penthouse in Ikoyi, a sprawling space that occupied the entire top floor of a luxury building. The ring was a diamond so large it looked almost vulgar, surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled like captured stars. "Say yes," he commanded more than asked, "and I will give you the world." She said yes without hesitation, without asking the questions she should have asked, without noticing that his smile still never reached his eyes, without seeing the darkness that clung to him like a shadow. The wedding was the event of the season, covered by every society magazine and blog. No expense was spared. The bride wore 3 different dresses, each more elaborate than the last. There were fireworks and live performances by A-list musicians. The guest list read like a who's who of Nigerian power, politicians and business moguls and celebrities. Isioma floated through it all in a haze of happiness, believing she had finally arrived at her destiny. But destiny, she would learn, sometimes comes dressed as desire. They moved into Chief's mansion in Lekki, a palatial estate behind high walls topped with electric fencing and monitored by armed guards. The house had 12 bedrooms, a swimming pool, a home theater, and staff quarters that housed the small army of people who kept the property running. Cooks, cleaners, gardeners, drivers, security personnel. Isioma had everything she had ever wanted. Unlimited access to money, shopping trips to Dubai and London, a garage full of luxury cars, closets full of designer clothes. She posted pictures on Instagram, and her followers grew by the thousands. People called her goals, called her blessed, called her lucky. She smiled for the cameras and believed she had won. But at night, in the vast bedroom she shared with Chief, she began to notice things. He would wake suddenly, crying out names she did not recognize, his body drenched in sweat. When she asked about his nightmares, his face would close like a door, and he would tell her not to ask questions about things she could not understand. Sometimes, late at night, he would receive phone calls that would send him out of the house at odd hours. He would return in the early morning, smelling of strange incense and earth, his eyes hollow and distant. The staff moved through the house like ghosts, their eyes downcast, speaking only when spoken to. When Isioma tried to befriend them, to chat casually as she had with people before, they would mumble polite responses and retreat. She noticed they wore specific beads and charms, and when she asked about them, the head cook, an old Yoruba woman named Mama Siun, had looked at her with pity. "For protection," was all she said. "Protection from what?" Isioma had laughed, but Mama Siun had not answered, just returned to her work with the wariness of someone who had seen too much. Isioma began to explore the mansion, this gilded cage she now called home. Most of the rooms were unlocked, but there was one that was always sealed. When she asked Chief about it, his face had darkened. "That room is not for you. Never go there. Do you understand?" It was the first time he had spoken to her harshly, and something in his tone made her blood run cold. She nodded, but curiosity, that ancient human failing, had been planted. The nightmares grew worse. Chief would wake screaming about blood, about debts unpaid, about faces in the darkness. He began to age before her eyes, lines deepening on his face, his hair graying rapidly. He would spend hours in his study, burning candles and muttering in languages she did not understand, consulting with strange visitors who came hooded and left before dawn. And Isioma began to hear things. At night, when the house should have been silent, she would hear sounds from beneath them, from below the ground. Whispers that seemed to come from the walls themselves, footsteps in empty hallways, the sound of weeping that had no source. She tried to tell herself it was her imagination, the stress of adjusting to married life. But her sleep grew fitful, and she began to lose weight. The glow that had always surrounded her began to dim. She looked in the mirror and saw shadows under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. One night, when Chief was away on one of his mysterious trips, Isioma's curiosity overcame her fear. She took the key she had seen hidden in his study and walked to the forbidden room. The door opened with a creak that sounded like a scream. The room was not what she expected. It was not an office or a storage space. It was a shrine. The walls were painted red, the color of blood, or perhaps painted with blood itself. In the center of the room stood an altar made of black stone, carved with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Around it were arranged objects that made Isioma's stomach turn. Bones that looked too human, bottles filled with dark liquids, photographs of people she did not recognize, their eyes crossed out with red marker. And there on the walls were papers, contracts written in languages both modern and ancient. She saw names, lists of names, some crossed out, some still waiting. She saw dates and amounts, transactions recorded in blood and ink. She saw her own name recently added, with notations she could not fully understand, but that filled her with dread. She heard a voice behind her, soft and terrible. "Now you know." She spun to find Chief standing in the doorway, no longer the powerful businessman, but something else, something diminished and desperate. In the dim light from the hallway, she could see through him, could see the shadows that clung to him like chains, shadows with eyes that watched and waited. "The wealth you enjoy," he said, his voice hollow, "has a price. Everything has a price. I paid it and I continue to pay it. Each day, each night I pay." "What have you done?" Isioma whispered, though part of her already knew. He laughed, a broken sound. "What have I done? I have done what many do. I sought power without wanting to work for it, wealth without earning it honestly. I found those who promised shortcuts, who promised success if I would only give them what they asked. And what they asked seemed so small at first, a ritual here, a sacrifice there, animals at first, then other things. Each success requiring more, each level of wealth demanding greater payments. He moved into the room, and Isioma saw that he was crying, tears streaming down his face. I thought I was using them, but they were using me. Now I am bound, chained to entities I cannot escape. They own me, Isioma. They own everything I have, everything I am. And they will own you too if you stay. The people in those photographs, Isioma said, her voice shaking. What happened to them? They were payments, Chief said simply. Business rivals who stood in my way, associates who knew too much. One of my wives, the one who tried to expose me. All of them, gone. Not by my hand directly, but by the forces I serve. They arrange such things, accidents, illnesses, madness. The shadows do their work, and I rise higher. Isioma felt her legs give way, and she sank to the floor. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked, he said. Because you opened the door. Because some part of me, the part that still remembers being human, hopes you will run. Run now, Isioma, before you are bound as I am. Take nothing from this house, wear nothing I have given you, for all of it is marked. Run back to your mother, back to the simple life you despised. It may save you. But even as he spoke, the shadows in the room began to move, to coalesce. Isioma felt cold hands that were not hands touching her, felt whispers in her mind promising her that she could stay, that she could have everything, that all she had to do was accept the price as Chief had done. She thought of her mother, of Mama Nkechi working at her sewing machine before dawn, earning honest money through honest labor. She thought of her aunt who had tried to teach her to cook, to clean, to be self-sufficient. She thought of all the warnings she had ignored, all the wisdom she had rejected in her pursuit of the easy path to wealth. No, she said, her voice small but growing stronger. No, I will not pay this price. She stood, and the cold intensified. The whispers grew louder, angry now. The shadows reached for her, but she ran. She ran from the room, from the house, from the golden cage that had nearly become her tomb. Behind her she heard Chief calling, whether in warning or triumph she could not tell. She ran through the marble halls in her bare feet, past the startled staff who knew what she was fleeing from, past the guards who had been paid not to see certain things. She ran through the gates that opened as if the house itself wanted her gone, as if she had failed some test and was being expelled. She ran through the streets of Lekki in her nightgown, this woman who had always been so carefully curated, so perfectly presented. Cars honked, people stared, but she did not stop until she reached a bus stop, until she could board a Moluwe heading toward Surulere, toward home. Back Mama Nkechi was awake when Isioma arrived at dawn, having run the last few blocks from the bus stop. The older woman opened the door to find her daughter disheveled, terrified, but alive. Mama, Isioma sobbed, falling into her mother's arms. Mama, you were right. You were right about everything. Mama Nkechi asked no questions. She simply held her daughter, this child who had finally come home, and led her inside. She prepared hot tea with honey and ginger, the way she had when Isioma was small and troubled by nightmares. She drew a bath and found clean clothes, simple clothes that had no designer labels. Later, when Isioma could speak, she told her mother everything. Mama Nkechi listened with the quiet strength of women who have always known that shortcuts often lead to cliffs. "What will I do?" Isioma asked. "He will come for me. They will come for me." "No," her mother said firmly. "You took nothing from that house. You rejected the bargain they offered. You are marked perhaps, but not bound. We will go to the pastor, to the traditional healer, to whoever can help cleanse you of what touched you there, and you will live differently now." And so began Isioma's true education. The wealth she had briefly known was gone, but more than that, the desire for it had been burned out of her by what she had seen. She could no longer look at displays of luxury without wondering what price had been paid, could no longer envy the women with designer bags without wondering what darkness might be funding them. She began to learn the things she should have learned years ago. Mama Nkechi taught her to cook, and though she burned the rice at first and cut her fingers chopping vegetables, she persisted. She learned to clean, to manage a household, to budget money and make it stretch. She learned traditional crafts from her aunt, the patience required to create something beautiful with her own hands rather than simply buying it with someone else's money. She enrolled in evening classes at the local polytechnic, studying business administration. During the day, she helped her mother with the sewing business, learning to operate the old Singer machine, to measure and cut fabric, to understand what customers truly needed versus what they thought they wanted. The transformation was not easy. There were nights when she woke screaming, feeling cold hands reaching for her from the darkness. There were days when she saw women her age driving past in expensive cars, dripping in jewelry, and felt the old hunger rise in her chest like bile. There were moments when she wondered if she had made a mistake, if she should have stayed and accepted the price. But then she would look at her mother's face, lined with honest labor and genuine peace, and she would remember what she had seen in that red room, the photographs of people who had been consumed by Chief's ambition, and she would know she had chosen correctly. Word spread through Lagos society about what had happened. The story became twisted in the telling, as stories always do. Some said Isioma had gone mad. Others claimed she had been caught stealing and thrown out. Still others whispered darker truths, but only in corners where such truths were acknowledged. Chief Okonkwo did not pursue her. Perhaps he had meant what he said about wanting her to escape, or perhaps the forces he served had deemed her unworthy once she rejected them. She would sometimes see his face in the society pages, at parties and events, always surrounded by beautiful women who looked at him with the same hunger that had once burned in her own eyes. She would say a prayer for them and turn the page. 2 years passed. Isioma was now 25, but she looked different from the girl who had once paraded through clubs in borrowed finery. She still possessed beauty, but it was tempered now with something deeper. Wisdom, earned through suffering and choice. She had completed her diploma and started a small business with her mother, expanding the sewing operation into a modest boutique that created affordable, quality clothing for everyday women. They called it Honest Hands, and though they would never be featured in Genevieve magazine, their customers were loyal and their reputation was solid.
And so the message is clear. There are no true shortcuts to genuine success, and the price of compromise is always higher than it appears. If you are a young woman listening to this story, especially if you are beautiful and people have told you that beauty is all you need, please hear me. You are more than your appearance. Your worth is not measured in the number of likes or follows, or even the size of diamond ring you might one day wear. The shortcuts they offer always lead to cliffs. The easy paths always have hidden costs. Learn to cook, learn to clean, get your education, develop your skills. Build something real with your hands. Seek partners who will value your mind and spirit and not just your body. Choose the long road, yes, even when shortcuts glitters. The price of beauty when beauty becomes your only currency is too high. Choose differently and choose wisely. If this story touched you, then I'm sure you'll enjoy more of our stories. Do subscribe to Tales by Larinzy. Like and comment your biggest takeaway. Until next time, stay blessed. I love you all.